Some betrayals don't come with shouting or warning signs. They come quietly, with polite smiles, handshakes, and seemingly harmless emails. You don't see it coming until the rug is gone beneath your feet, and by then, it's already too late. I thought I had it all figured out. A steady job, respect, stability, and the illusion of security. But security, I learned, is a fragile thing, easily broken by greed, envy, and the kind of people who see your loyalty as weakness. It started with a Monday. I walked into the office expecting the usual hum of fluorescent lights and clacking keyboards. Instead, I was greeted by a quiet tension that made my stomach tighten. My manager, someone I had trusted for years, avoided eye contact and kept glancing at her phone. I sensed it immediately. Something was wrong. By lunch, I had the answer. A terse email sent from HR, "Please see me in my office immediately. This is urgent." I walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. The HR manager, a woman whose friendly demeanor had always felt genuine, now seemed like a stranger. "Have a seat," she said, her voice neutral, almost rehearsed. "I'm afraid we're letting you go," she said. I blinked, thinking I had misheard. "Excuse me?" "We've decided your position is being terminated effective immediately," she continued, sliding a resignation letter across the desk. "Sign this, or we'll have to take further steps. No explanation, no warning, just a letter and a threat." I sat there, stunned, trying to make sense of it. 21 years of dedication, sleepless nights, project launches, mentoring junior staff, saving the company from minor disasters, all reduced to a single sheet of paper. I signed. Walking out that day felt like stepping off a cliff. The air outside was cold, but I barely noticed. My mind was spinning, not with fear but with something else, anger. Deep, simmering anger at the audacity of people who thought they could erase my existence without consequence. The first week at home was quiet. Too quiet. I kept replaying the moments, searching for some clue I had missed. That's when the calls started. The first one was subtle, a number I didn't recognize, a polite voice. "Hello, may I speak with Miss Carter?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "I'm calling regarding your recent resignation. We have some questions." "Questions?" I asked, bewildered. "Legal questions," the voice replied, calm, precise, almost clinical. "It would be best if we spoke at your earliest convenience." I hung up, uneasy. A lawyer calling me directly? I had no contract disputes, no outstanding obligations, or so I thought. Days passed. The calls became more frequent, more insistent. They asked the same questions in different ways, probing for something. I didn't know what, but I realized I was being tested, pushed, prodded, and slowly a plan began forming in my mind. I wouldn't just defend myself. I would make them regret every step they had taken. I spent nights digging, researching, company policies, internal memos, emails I had saved over the years. Every subtle oversight, every potential misstep I cataloged. There were many, too many for them to hide behind polite smiles and legal jargon. And then, one evening, as I sat surrounded by stacks of documents and my laptop, it hit me. This wasn't just about losing a job. This was personal. They thought they could erase me quietly. They thought a lawyer and a resignation letter were enough to silence me. They had no idea what was coming. I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. The game had begun. I didn't call the lawyer back. Not that night. Not the next day either. Silence can be powerful when people expect fear, and fear was exactly what they were waiting for. I could hear it in their voicemail messages, the careful politeness cracking just enough to reveal urgency underneath. "Miss Carter, we really need to clarify a few things." Clarify. That word kept repeating. I let them wait. Instead, I met with someone else. Her name was Denise, and she had worked in compliance for almost 3 decades before retiring. We weren't close friends, but I had once helped her through a messy internal audit, staying late for weeks when everyone else disappeared. When I called her and explained, carefully, that I'd been forced out and now a company lawyer was calling me, she didn't sound surprised. "They're nervous," she said flatly, "which means you know something they don't want surfaced." "I don't even know what that is yet," I admitted. "You will," she replied. "They always leave fingerprints." That night, I opened old folders I hadn't touched in years, archived emails, meeting notes, performance reviews, I wasn't searching randomly, I was following instinct. Patterns, places where management had rushed decisions, overridden policy, asked me to just handle it quietly. By dawn, my hands were shaking. Not from exhaustion, but from realization. There it was, a project from 4 years ago, one that had nearly collapsed under regulatory pressure. I remembered the frantic meetings, the late-night revisions, the executive who had cornered me in the hallway and said, "If this goes public, we're done." I had fixed it, quietly, efficiently, and stupidly I had saved everything. The calls intensified, different numbers, firmer tone. "We need to discuss your role in certain operational decisions." That was when I knew. They weren't worried about what I might say. They were worried about what I could prove. I finally answered on the 5th call. "Ms. Carter," the lawyer said, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for days. "Thank you for taking the time." "I didn't resign voluntarily," I replied. A pause. "That's not our understanding. I was told to sign or be terminated," I continued calmly. "Which part would you like to clarify?" Another pause. Longer. He shifted tactics. "There are some concerns about your access to company materials. I retained personal records," I said. "Nothing confidential beyond what I was legally entitled to keep." Silence again. I imagined him scribbling notes, recalculating. "We'd like to resolve this amicably," he said finally. "Perhaps with a mutual agreement." There it was. The olive branch. The first crack. "I'm open to listening," I said. "But I'm not interested in being threatened." After we hung up, I didn't feel victorious. I felt something heavier. Power. Over the next weeks, I documented everything. Dates, times, voicemails. Each call became more careful, more measured. They knew now that I wasn't panicking, that I wasn't desperate to disappear quietly. Then something unexpected happened. A former coworker reached out. "I don't know if I should be telling you this," she wrote, "but they're blaming you internally." I read that message 3 times. They had painted me as a liability, a potential whistleblower, someone who might cause trouble. That narrative justified forcing me out, justified the lawyer, justified the pressure. I wasn't just collateral damage. I was the shield. That realization hurt more than the termination itself. I had protected them, covered gaps, absorbed risk. And when it became convenient, they pushed me out and hoped I'd stay silent. Instead, I made a decision. I contacted a journalist. Not a sensationalist. Someone known for quiet, meticulous reporting. I didn't give her documents. Not yet. I gave her a story. A hypothetical. Asked questions. What happens when a company forces out a senior employee who handled regulatory risk? Her interest sharpened immediately. That same week, the lawyer called again. "This is escalating unnecessarily," he said. "We can offer a settlement." I smiled. "For what?" I asked. "You said I resigned." Another silence. That night I received an internal memo from someone still inside, detailing a review committee being quietly assembled. My name was on it, my work, my decisions, they were prep. Airing a narrative. So I prepared mine. I organized my files chronologically, clean, verifiable, impossible to dismiss as bitterness. I looped in Denise again, who helped me identify exactly which regulations had been bent, and who had ordered it. And then I waited. The lawyer stopped calling. That's when I knew part 3 would be unavoidable. Because silence, when it comes from people who were once frantic, usually means only one thing. They weren't trying to scare me anymore. They were trying to survive. The silence had lasted almost a week. No calls, no emails, no follow-ups. I had learned, long ago, that in moments like these, silence could be louder than shouting. It meant they were waiting. Waiting for me to make a mistake, to panic, or to show weakness. But I didn't. I had patience. And patience, I knew, was a weapon sharper than any lawyer's letter. I spent that week assembling my final files. Every email, every memo, every internal note that proved I had been the one who saved projects, covered mistakes, and absorbed risk. Every one of their attempts to justify my termination, every overstep, every half-truth, all documented, clean, undeniable. I didn't go to them. I didn't threaten them. I let the system do its work. The first move came from the journalist. Her call startled me, "Miss Carter. I think you should see this before it goes live. It's bigger than we thought." I walked into my living room and opened the files she had sent. internal communications from the company showing their attempts to quietly discredit me, blaming me for errors that weren't mine, and even the emails between executives discussing how to handle me after my resignation. They underestimated me. They thought I would be silent. They had left a trail, and I had followed it meticulously. That night, I drafted my letter to the company's board, calm, factual, professional. I outlined every point, the projects I had led, the mistakes I had corrected, the regulatory risks I had mitigated, and the attempts made to force me out. I attached copies of emails, memos, and documentation. I didn't send it yet. First, I made a few calls. To Denise, to the journalist, and to a trusted attorney. I wanted everything lined up. Every document verifiable, every statement defensible. Then the lawyer called again. His tone was no longer polite. It was strained. Tentative. "Miss Carter," he said, "we need to speak about the files you have." "I assume you mean the files that prove exactly why I was forced to resign?" I asked. My voice was steady, calm, but inside I felt the satisfaction rolling in like waves. "Yes," he said, faltering. We want to resolve this quietly." I leaned back in my chair, considering my options. "I've already started discussions," I said. "If you'd like to resolve it quietly, you'll need to contact the board directly. I've copied them on everything. You have 24 hours. That was all I said. They scrambled. I could almost hear the tension through the lawyer's neck-stammered voicemail. They tried sending emails, arranging meetings, trying to negotiate. But it was too late. The trail was too clear. Every move they had made had been documented. Every misstep they had hoped to hide had been exposed. And then the call stopped. Weeks passed. I watched from the sidelines as the company internally restructured, quietly addressing the regulatory gaps I had flagged for years, removing executives who had overstepped and trying to recover their reputation. I stayed out of it entirely. I didn't need to be in the center of their chaos. I simply let it happen. Finally, the journalist published her piece, a meticulously reported story, highlighting the exact issues I had faced and the lengths the company went to force me out. The article didn't sensationalize me. It didn't dramatize the events. It just told the truth. The response was swift. Social media buzzed. The board released a statement acknowledging internal oversights and promising full transparency. Executives who had been involved were quietly reassigned or resigned, and through it all, I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, reading the story unfold, and feeling something I hadn't in months. Peace. I didn't take revenge with lawsuits or threats. I didn't engage in petty back and forths. I simply let the truth, combined with careful planning, do what it always does, expose the guilty. I closed my laptop and looked out the window. The sunlight felt warm, familiar, and real. Some betrayals come quietly, but so can justice. You don't need to shout, you don't need to fight with fists. You just need patience, preparation, and the courage to let your story be told. For years they had underestimated me. For years they had assumed silence equaled defeat. But I had learned a different lesson. Silence, when armed with truth, is louder than any threat. And in the end, it was theirs who broke under it. Not me. I left that chapter of my life behind without looking back. No calls, no grudges, no unfinished business. The company had learned, in their own painful way, that loyalty and integrity cannot be bought or broken. As for me, I had my freedom, my dignity, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that when people try to erase you, it's not the end, it's just the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving, thriving, and letting the world see exactly what happened. And that is exactly what I did.